semiconductor supply chains and development, and that would enhance the United States? Because right now you're saying that serious harm is being caused to the semiconductor industry because of these tariffs.
President Trump is trying to do what the previous administration
partners around the world.
American companies good negotiated. The colleagues in the former administration were allergic to treat free trade negotiations. It was President Trump who negotiated the USMCA, and at least he's been trying to level the playing field for American companies, goods and services around the world. So it's easy to criticize, but the truth is President Trump is trying to do what the previous administration failed to do, which is to level the playing field. So Dr. Bhaskaran, as Mr. Isaacs knows, we focused a lot in the last few years on the advanced semiconductor supply chain. If there's one thing that COVID exposed, it's our dependency on these vulnerable supply chains. But now that we've begun to address the supply chains of advanced semiconductors, thanks, as you pointed out, Mr. Isaacs, to the first Trump administration, when I remember distinctly Mike Pompeo and Wilbur Ross bringing to us this vulnerability and saying, you know, we only make 12% of these in the United States, and this is a terrible national security and economic risk. So we've begun to remedy that. But Dr. Bhaskaran, you've talked a little bit about the mining and the resources of these critical minerals, but would you distinguish between processing and mining? In other words, my understanding is that while you're exactly right that we do need additional reserves of these critical minerals, China still controls 90% of the processing, and so this is an incredible vulnerability for the United States. Do you agree?
Thank you, Senator Cornyn. Absolutely. It is our single biggest vulnerability is the processing.
And this isn't just an economic vulnerability. This is a national security vulnerability, right?
Absolutely. We saw it just this last couple of weeks with the heavy rare earth export restrictions. We produce heavy rare earths here in the United States. We can get heavy rare earths from Brazil, but we're currently stockpiling them because typically we send our heavy rare earths to China for separation because our separation facilities aren't completed. Now we're unable to do that because we don't have those processing capabilities finished. So we need to build those capabilities here at home. But one of the key binding constraints that we have here in the US for that is it's extremely energy intensive. And we don't actually have the energy at scale to be able to cost competitively do that. So while we want to build our processing capabilities, given the low profit margins on that segment of the supply chain, we need to ensure that we're working on the other infrastructure barriers around that here at home. Ultimately, if we are to take a page out of China's playbook, we're going to source minerals from abroad and we're going to do the best we can to bring them back home for processing or to allied countries.
So let me just comment on this real quick. I'm gonna stop sharing. Or I don't need to stop sharing. So we cannot use China's playbook. And by we, I mean America, the American industry. Why? Communism versus capitalism. So I see a lot of, and I've heard and I've even read a lot of reports, analysis. China's doing this. We need to some way, somehow use their playbook so that we can start processing critical minerals here in America. We cannot. We cannot compare ourselves to China because their industry operates on a parameter that we will never be able to understand, let alone duplicate, because communism versus capitalism. So one way that what we can do is we use our strengths and we use what we know to do and slowly build our capabilities. We do not need to build processing, refining centers here. We can build them wherever we're sourcing the critical minerals. That's what Terra Ledger is going to do. So we're going to be on the ground in Masisi, DRC. We buy the ore from the local economy right then and there. We process it right then and there, and then we ship it to New Hampshire.
Well, I know that President Trump has been not only negotiated a critical minerals deal with Ukraine, which I think will address a lot of the concerns we have about access to reserves, but also reports are that he's negotiating with the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
There we go. DRC. Masisi is in DRC. Yeah, just wanted to point that out right there.
I was in the DRC in last August and learned, as you point out, about the Lobito corridor, which is the only opportunity we have to eliminate China's monopoly on these critical minerals that are being produced in the DRC. And so it seems to me that some good work is being done in Ukraine and in Africa in providing greater access to the reserves. And I take your point that we need to broaden our access to other friends and allies around the world who maybe we don't have free trade agreements with. But if we don't do more on processing, we're still going to see China with a stranglehold on the United States.
I'm wondering why Senator Cornyn of Texas, why didn't he visit the north? So the Lobito corridor, I'm just going to Google it real quick and see what comes up. Lobito, that's in the south. Lobito corridor map. Okay, I have a couple of choices. Fine, let's see what this looks like. So the Lobito corridor is, oh, Lobito corridor. So it seems like, so that looks like a railway system. Because again, this is where we are failing, right? Is because, so Senator Cornyn, he used a word that we shouldn't even be using, and I understand that this is politics because he says, we cannot eliminate China's presence.
But also,
right?
reports are that he's incredible vulnerability for the United States. Do you agree?
Thank you, Senator.
But also, reports are that he's negotiating with the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I was in the DRC in last August and learned, as you point out, about the Lobito corridor, which is the only opportunity we have to eliminate China's monopoly.
Okay. So we cannot eliminate China's monopoly because China's been on the ground for a long time. They've built logistics, they've built the shipping lines, they've built the refineries already. So the best thing that we can do is we can I'll try to find a word that's better, but there's no way we can eliminate their presence or their competition or eliminate the monopoly they have. That's going to take forever, and I do understand that this is a hearing on the United States Committee on Finance, so we do have to use some language here that is palatable for the audience. But we cannot eliminate their monopoly. The best thing we can do, if we get started now, maybe in 10 years, we will have a presence that's large enough where we can put a dent in the monopoly they have. So now going back to the Lobito corridor that Senator Cornyn visited. So here it is. So it looks like it's a railway system. Let me see if I can make that better here. So railway system, I don't know if you guys can see this really well, but so it goes from a place called Kolwezi, and so from, I would say central, no, not central, that's even southeast. No. Let's go back here. So I want this. Okay, so here is what he's talking about. This is the Democratic Republic of Congo. Okay, it's a very big country. And he went south. So I guess this is the southern part of the DRC. Okay, and this is the Lobito corridor. Need to make this. Okay, so we went all the way south, the Lobito corridor, and it goes all the way through, it goes through Angola to the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, and then from there, I guess we put it on ships and then we ship it wherever. Great. That's one way to go about it. What Terra Ledger is going to do is actually start in the northeast, so right around here. Am I looking at this right? Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. Why didn't they put the Rwanda and Burundi down in this picture? I'm not sure why. Anywho, so Terra Ledger is going to be on the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the Lobito corridor is southern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and it goes to the Atlantic Ocean. What we want to do is our pilot operations are going to be in the eastern part, northeast of DRC. And we're going to, so we haven't figured out shipping yet, but so I just wanted to show what Senator Cornyn was talking about, what the Lobito corridor is, where it's at in terms of the location in the DRC. Okay, so let's go back to the hearing.
On these critical minerals that are being produced in the DRC. And so it seems to me that some good work is being done in Ukraine and in Africa in providing greater access to the reserves. And I take your point that we need to broaden our access to other friends and allies around the world who maybe we don't have free trade agreements with. But if we don't do more on processing, we're still going to see China with a stranglehold on the United States economically and national security-wise. I had a chance to visit a rare earth processing facility in Fort Worth recently, MP Materials, where they are the sole manufacturer and processor of rare earth minerals to make magnets. And for those who are uninitiated, like I was, magnets are needed in everything with an electric motor. From national security material to the cars we drive and everything else. And that's a single facility in the United States. And so we need a lot more processing.
So shout out to this company here. Let me see if I can get the
Maybe
name.
we don't have free trade agreements with, but if we don't do
In
more
Texas.
on processing, we're still going to see China with a stranglehold on the United States economically and national security-wise. I had a chance to visit a rare earth processing facility in Fort Worth recently, MP Materials, where they are the sole manufacturer and processor of rare earth minerals to make magnets. And for those who are uninitiated, like I was, magnets are needed in everything with an electric motor. From national security material to the cars we drive and everything else. And that's a single facility in the United States. And so we need a lot more processing in addition to more reserves, because if you set aside semiconductors for a second, to me, this is the single biggest vulnerability, I agree with you, that the United States economy and our national security has. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Hassan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Wyden, for having this hearing.
Okay, so that's one part. Let's see it another time. So thank you, Senator Cornyn. That's at 1:31.
Panelists today in the conversation. Dr. Pronounce your name for me. Is it Bhaskaran? Bhaskaran. Thank you very much. Let me ask you this, and I'm sure you've talked a little bit about this, and I understand Senator Cornyn addressed this a little with you with rare earth minerals. But we know China controls 90% of the world's manufacturing of rare earth minerals into magnets, which we know are critical to U.S. national defense and the economy. I have a bipartisan bill that would help build the U.S. supply chain for these minerals by creating a tax credit for companies domestically manufacturing the magnets necessary to power American technology. My question to you is, do you think there is a role for tax credits like these to incentivize greater production of mined?
Of course there's a role, and I'm wondering, how is that not law already? So of course there's a role. So legislation does have to enable industry. So obviously I know Dr. Bhaskaran is going to say yes, but yes, of course there's a role.
And processed critical minerals in the United States.
Yes, I'll go first.
Production tax credits will be very important, Senator. The reason is this, is China actually flooded the market with rare earths between 2010 and about 2018, and it actually forced prices for rare earths down to a point that made it very difficult for non-Chinese entities to compete in this space. Remember, America was once the top rare earths producer in the world between the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. So what we need is
So bring back the 50s, the manufacturing prowess of the 50s, 60s, and 80s. Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Dr.
an
Bhaskaran.
incentive to get companies to make these long-term investments in a time when prices are really low. The difficulty is we are being outcompeted by the Chinese. So any way that we can reduce the cost of doing.
We're not being outcompeted. We're not even competing. I understand that this is a public forum, but we're not even competing. We're not even there.
Business for these companies is really going to be critical to what Mr. Ragland said is leveling the playing field.
Right.
We have the same dilemma in mining.
Do you think there are trade policies that complement domestic production tax credits? Is there something else we should be thinking about with respect to trade policies?
I think using some sort of trade incentive to source minerals from abroad, and this includes rare earths. Remember that in the United States, we are building our processing capabilities and our permanent magnet manufacturing. The difficulty is at the end of the day, we still have 1.3% of the world's reserves. We should be tapping into reserves. When we add up Brazil and Vietnam, it's actually greater than China in absolute reserves, but we're not really leveraging these to bring those rare earths back home to separate and manufacture here. That's what U.S. leadership is to me. It's sourcing from abroad to bring that home. So how do we create the tax incentive, the investment incentive in those markets to bring it home is going to be really key.
This is very interesting because Brazil and Vietnam, I think she said. So the issue with Brazil, and this, I'm ignorant when it comes to Brazil in general, but the only way that the model would change, because the way that things work now is there's a shipment of, we buy what we need. It is usually shipped from the Eurozone or from PRC. Even if it comes from Brazil, Vietnam, Africa, whatever, it comes from the Eurozone. It is shipped to us from the Eurozone or PRC. So the only way that model is going to change, of course, there's legislation to encourage companies here to play a part in the sourcing. Even if we sourced everything, right? Who's going to process it? Who's going to refine it? So again, shout out to MP Materials out of Texas. That is the only RRE refiner, according to Senator Cornyn, who's doing that now. So we still have to build the refining facilities. So it's not just sourcing. Okay, we can source, everything, and then who's going to refine it? And the refining architecture is in PRC or in the Eurozone.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much. Let me also ask you, in Nevada, listen, I'm very proud. Nevada has the most mineral wealth of any state in the country, and we produced almost 10 billion worth of mineral commodities in 2024, which, by the way, supports about 83,000 jobs in my state. But as we were talking, this is threatened by Chinese, right? By Chinese firms that don't play by the rules, by overproducing, underpricing critical minerals to undercut.
It's not that they don't play by the rules. They don't play by our rules, really. So they have their own agenda. And our agenda, honestly, when it comes to manufacturing, is we just need to, there's a procurement plan. The job of the procurement officer in any company in the US is you need to source the material that's needed at the best available price. Naturally, you have to take a couple of things into consideration, like maybe the shipping timeline, and then the quality, of course. So you may be able to procure some items, or so procurement may have some leeway in terms of how much they can spend, but really, why would you spend $10 on something when you can buy this something that works? You can pay $10 for something, or you can pay $1. Same thing, same item, you pay $1. So that's just how it is.
Cut our companies. Let me ask you this. Do you believe that targeted and strategic tariffs, unlike the chaotic blanket tariffs that we see here imposed by this administration, can play an important role? And as we are thinking about the targeted tariffs, please talk.
I think I know already what Dr. Biscarin will say, and she'll say, yes, targeted tariffs are better than blanket tariffs. That's fine. I have my own opinion on that I don't need to share. So let's see, there is another part that I want to discuss, which is at 159. Let's see. I can find it here.
Doing. The second point I would say is that strategic tariffs and not blanket.
Still
Able to come
talking
in
about
and say, hey, wait a
tariffs?
minute,
Okay.
this is really commodity crop farms that they'll lose, that there's a hearing process and the upside.
Doing. The second
Talk about how
I'm just
difference
trying to
between
find
the United States and the West and China
Okay.
is that we have fiduciary responsibilities to our shareholders. Companies have an obligation to operate profitably, and ensuring that our tariff policies are congruent with ensuring these companies can operate profitably are critical. Otherwise, we're just continuing allowing China to dominate. So looking at it supply chain by supply chain, number one, and then two, looking at the various stages from raw ore, processed, all the way through finished goods will be critical to ensuring that we don't cripple our long-term reindustrialization goals.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Young.
Okay.
Dr. Bascarin, the Chinese Communist Party isn't just exporting minerals, it's exporting leverage. By controlling the midstream choke points of global mineral processing and using that power to restrict exports of rare earth elements, Beijing is effectively turning raw materials into raw geopolitical pressure. America can't afford, in my estimation, to respond with vague policies or blanket tariffs. That's why I've introduced a strategic three-part legislative approach: the Finding Ore Act, the Critical Minerals Security Act, and the Strategic Minerals Act, to map global resources with a right of first refusal, to monitor supply chain risks, and to forge sector-specific free trade agreements with trusted partners. Even if we streamline permitting tomorrow, Dr. Bascarin, which is a much-needed priority, we'd still need international partnerships because the U.S. simply doesn't have every mineral under our feet. Dr. Bascarin, given these realities, do you believe this sector-specific approach in my Strategic Minerals Act is the right path to secure long-term supply?
Thank you, Senator. I think the sector-specific trade agreements are absolutely critical, and I want to commend you on a lot of the great work you've been doing. When we start back and think about exploration, identifying new deposits are absolutely critical, and ensuring those stay in allied hands is really important. One of the reasons China has excelled is they have taken the whole supply chain from exploration, mapping, exploration, production, and processing. For the U.S. to come in and excel, it needs to start at that early stage. I think that's important. Second, sector-specific trade agreements are important. As was earlier noted, it's not really the flavor of the decade to go to a free trade agreement as a whole,
Right.
but we need to ensure that we are being targeted with our trade policies to our long-term vulnerabilities, because we see that China continues to weaponize them. The list just keeps getting longer. So absolutely, it's going to be many of the tools that you've highlighted.
Great, thank you.
Good
Too
answer.
often, it seems, Dr. Beskeren, that the conversation around critical minerals ends at the mine. Certainly, many of our conversations here in Congress, and understandably so, many of our constituents are excited about accessing domestic minerals on account of the jobs it creates, and it just seems intuitively to make a lot of sense. But without refining, there is no supply chain, there is no value chain, and there is no utility for these rocks and other minerals we get out of the ground. The U.S. has made meaningful progress in growing domestic midstream capacity, but China still dominates globally, manufacturing over 90% of rare earths and graphite processing. That kind of concentration isn't just risky. It gives Beijing outsized influence over the global industrial base. Our allies, like Japan, have taken a more strategic approach, pairing public financing with enforceable offtake agreements to secure mineral access and build processing capacity abroad, locking in supply while supporting its industrial base. Dr. Beskeren, in your written testimony, you referenced Japan as a successful model. Could you expand on how a similar approach might work for the United States and what you see as the most important steps Congress can take to develop midstream processing capacity without simply shifting the bottlenecks?
Thanks so much, Senator. You know, one of the things that made Japan so successful is where they use state funding, there's an offtake requirement that must go to Japanese companies. What we don't want to do in the United States is use DFC and use Exim, both of which are up for reauthorization in 2025 and 2026, to fund projects that ultimately get signed over to Chinese processing. We've already seen it with Serra Verde, which has been shortlisted as a heavy rare earth project by the U.S.-led Mineral Security Partnership, that in the New York Times recently came out that they've signed their long-term offtake agreement over to China. That is actually quite self-defeating.
Okay, so now this keeps coming up a lot, so let's go ahead and offtake agreements, because that comes up a lot. And then we'll talk about Serra Verde. And then, okay, so here, I have seen this word in my conversations, and I don't like it, but let's go ahead. So an offtake agreement is a binding contract where a buyer agrees to purchase all or a significant portion of a producer's future output, okay, over a set period of time, often before production starts, to secure financing and market for the project. These agreements provide revenue certainty for producers, blah, 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 blah. So an offtake agreement is a binding contract where the buyer agrees to purchase, even before, it says here, often before production starts. So that's the offtake here. And then now let's go to Serra Verde. Is it Serra Verde? I'm just going to write sold to China, even though I know the company is not sold to China. But anyway, what happened with Serra Verde? Okay, so Serra Verde Mineração or Mineração. I don't know. I want to say Mineração. Brazil. What happened there? So The situation is considered a geopolitical paradox because the mine was financed by US and UK investors, okie dokie, with the aim of creating a rare earth supply chain independent of China's control. How? Although, kudos to them. But again, this goes back to you can have as much of the ore, you can have as much as you want. Who is refining it? Who's processing it? Let's see what happened. So they wanted to be independent. Despite this, China controls 90% of the global refining and separation capacity for these critical minerals, making Chinese entities the primary customers capable of processing the material on a large scale. So what happened is they sold the ore that came out of the mine to be processed in China. I mean, and it's not even wrong. If they hadn't done that, it would have been a total waste of money. If we cannot process / refine anything here, and here we have US and UK investors, fine. As far as I know, there's no refining or processing facilities in the UK. I could be wrong, however, I think not. And number two, apart from our friends in Texas, MP Materials, as we don't have that capacity. I do remember a senator, and this is on this specific hearing, she mentioned Nevada, but I don't think there's a processing facility in Nevada. I could be wrong, we'll check. But anyway, that would, even if there was a processing facility in Nevada, that would still be two. The Chinese have, I'm sure, hundreds, and their industry is different. Communism versus capitalism. I'm sure that these refining capacities that were built in China, it took a long time because the position that they have now didn't just happen in a year or two. It took at least 30, 40 years to bring them to where they're at. So what happened? What's the end story here? In a separate but potentially related event, the Chinese group acquired. Okay, so this is about something else. But so yeah, so what happened with Serra Verde is US, UK investors. So a mine was built. So a mine was financed by US and UK investors. And then the ore was sent to China because they're the ones that can refine it. All right, so we talked about the offtake. What is an offtake agreement? Which is an agreement to purchase what comes out of the ground even before production starts. And then we went to Serra Verde. So let's go back to Dr. Bascarin.
For our use of taxpayer resources. What we want to do is ensure that where we're using government financing, it's aligned, a percentage of it is coming back either through guaranteed offtake or discounted offtake to US companies. This is how we start to take the mine to market supply chain.
She's right. So, and actually that makes sense. But the reason why she has to mention this is because we don't have refining companies here. So even if you finance the construction of a mine somewhere else, and even if you let's say you earmark 50% of the offtake agreements come to America, there's still no one to refine them. There's no companies. There are no companies.
So aligning our financing with our offtake agreements.
Thank you so much. Mr. Chairman? Have to yield back. I also have a med device question that I'd love to pose to.
That's pretty much all I want to go over with this on this hearing. So this hearing is dated May 14th, 2025. So almost a year now. And to illustrate exactly, because here we're talking policy, people seem to know what the problem is. We do have a senator that actually even went to Congo, right? And he was at a site, and he was able to see that there is potential. He went to the Lobito corridor, which is right here. Okay, so we have people that are understanding the problem. Now, I want to show you guys something that popped up on my feed when I was on YouTube. First, I was happy to see the ad, and then I thought to myself, okay, so this is still same old, same old. The problem is we don't have the refining capacity. So an ad popped up on my feed. And I hope everyone can see this. Okay, so this looks very made in America. It even says US made tungsten heavy alloys, right? So perfect. Excellent. Now, there's more. This is US made tungsten heavy alloy solutions for defense, nuclear, etc., etc. Excellent. Very happy. So this is, and there's more here, of course, request a quote. Okay, I want to request a quote. Yes. And there is a little bit of information here. The contact number or the contact address is Florida, right? Florida's in the USA. Excellent. This is great. So I said to myself, okay, this is excellent. I didn't know that um this I didn't know we made that. US made tungsten heavy alloy? Okay, great. So I go on LinkedIn and then I look at the company here, Asteris. I go on LinkedIn and here we go. Asteris. Perfect. And here we are, the leading supplier of private blah, blah, blah. So we went from US made to what? US supplier. Can everyone see this word here? Supplier. Okay, well, it's still something. So I'm very curious and I asked myself, I wonder, okay, so let's see who, if they're a supplier, they're getting it from somewhere. I wonder where. So I eventually, because I'm a nosy gal, okay, I go on the LinkedIn page of a kahuna, so someone that's higher up within Asteras. I just went with the managing director at Asteras, right? And then this beautiful thing pops up here, Abicor Group, right? So then I say, I wonder where, and then of course, then you can start seeing some non-US language. So we know that the supplier is in Europe already. Okay. So then I went and I Googled Abicor Group. I Google Abicor Group and then there we go. There's a website here. And voila, Abicor Group. Abicor Group is based in, I guess, Germany. Yes, and I'm just thinking Germany because Germany is number one, the manufacturing powerhouse of the Eurozone, but also, and I don't know if you can see the wording here. Oh, I guess I can't make it bigger. Okay. Anywho, it says the words here are German. So this is definitely a Dutch land company, and that's fine. But this goes back to, and I'll stop sharing here. What is the problem? What is going on with the industry? So President Trump is helping us out. He is enabling some deals with countries that have what we want. Perfect. Then the question comes up, and it's okay, even if we do go to those countries and we take out everything out of the ground, where do we ship it so that it can be refined? Because those countries usually don't have the refining done there. They don't have the facilities. All the facilities are in the Eurozone or in People's Republic of China. And then the other question comes, so now we're thinking, okay, there's a structural problem. It's not just the sourcing, we have to do the refining, which means we have to build the refining facilities, which means, and the reason why we have to refine whatever comes out of the ground is because we cannot ship it to companies here because our production standards are at a certain level. You can't ship unprocessed ore to BAE Systems, for example, or Lockheed Martin. No, it has to be refined to a certain level. So now it is a problem. So Terra Ledger is going to attempt to play its part in solving this problem. Are we going to be successful? Who knows? Place your bets and let's see where this is going to end up. What we're going to do is we're not going to take China's blueprint. We cannot compete with China. Their system is different. Their commercial systems are based on, it's not based on profit. It's based on the communities. Why? Communism versus capitalism. What we're going to do is we're actually going to have refining facilities where we source the ore from the ground. We're going to refine it right then and there, and then we're going to ship it to the United States. So that's what we're going to do. If you want to learn more about Terra Ledger, if you want to join Terra Ledger, because we are a startup incorporated in New Hampshire, you can contact me. I'll also leave some contact information in this video. We can work together. So Terra Ledger is in the pre-seed stage. We are fundraising for our seed round. And so we're at the very beginning of this thing. If you're interested, if you want something to do, reach out. So I hope this video gave you a little bit more information about the landscape of critical mineral sourcing, critical mineral refining, and how we're doing what, and by we, I mean how American companies are doing in terms of, is this possible? What is the problem? And of course, the role that People's Republic of China plays in this whole thing. So I hope this was interesting to everyone. My name is Claire Sengyumva. Talk to you soon.